Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Friday's edition of This Week at CFSA. I'm Nick Wood, the Policy Director here. I'm pleased today to be joined by Rosa Saavedra, the Regional Organizer for Bread for the World and covering North and South Carolina. So I want to welcome Rosa today. We're going to be talking about the issues of food and hunger and what we can do to work together to try and address the many needs our communities have to assure everyone has the ability to have enough food. So Rosa, I want to turn it over to you. Tell us a little bit about yourself, about Bread for the World.
I am Rosa Saavedra, like Nick said. I am the Southeast Regional Organizer, which includes North and South Carolina. And I work for Bread for the World, which is a faith-based organization, which is right now headquartered in Washington, D.C. But we are a collection of Christian voices that are dedicated to ending hunger. I think that's about it.
All right, great. Well, thank you, Rosa. I think we've got the Bread for the World website that we can post so people who are interested in learning more can check that out. So I'm going to jump right in. Rosa, when we've talked about these issues, you've talked about food as a human right. Tell us a little bit more.
Well, I've held that belief for kind of a long time, but it seems almost a natural way to think about it, right? We are human beings, and none of us will survive without food. So it seems an essential part of our humanity. So thereby it becomes not only a right, but a necessity. And by definition, anything that is a necessity, you should have a right to, right? Nobody should be able to deprive you of that, which then would make it a right. So Bread for the World has had this conversation for a long time, and I'm really happy to know that since its beginning back in 1974, by 1975, of course, times were different back then, but the idea about how do we as people of faith, where is it, either theologically or in our moral belief, where is it kind of stated that? And we're still in conversation about that, but it's a conversation that we really want to take into everybody's consciousness, including folks here listening. So you might have ideas about, what does it mean that food is a human right? And some people think, well, that means that everybody, the government has some responsibility to give people food, right? But it's beyond, a specific entity, to give food. And that's part of what our Bread for the World advocacy is about, creating political will, right, through advocacy for folks who support, not just support, but develop policies that address the needs of us as human beings, including our needs for food.
Thank you so much, Rosa. And one follow-up question I had is, we talk about the human right to food. Everyone should be able to have enough to eat and sustain themselves. But we also need to go better than that, as you said, bigger than that, to build thriving communities. And so I wanted to see if you could talk a moment about health and well-being of our communities and how it relates to food.
Well, there's this very, very intricate and intimate connection between food and health. And that's one thing that COVID, this pandemic, has really put out there in front of everybody. In fact, some of the people who are at most risk for COVID and its effects are folks that are suffering from what some people might say are diet-related diseases, nutritionally related, right? Not to say that people couldn't get diabetes from something other than improper nutrition, and not to say that people couldn't have, heart disease through some other, forms, but nutrition plays an enormous factor in both your vulnerability to illnesses such as COVID, but also your vulnerability to be able to reach your potential outside of health, because without health, you can't reach other potentials. So, and that's related to kind of productivity, right? So not only does the individual suffer, but the community at large suffers. And I'm not talking about suffering just in the human sense. What we try to convey to our legislators, and these are our members of Congress, and these are the important things that they are responsible for, is this is an economic suffering as well.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think that's a real valuable message to have and to consider. And I also just want to highlight what Rosa just said about talking to legislators and lobbying legislators. And as many folks know, this is what we do at CFSA on the policy team with our many, many allies, including food banks, groups like Bread for the World, our friends as the farmer market managers, and many others. And so I want to ask, as you've said, this COVID-19 pandemic has revealed a lot of things and exposed and exacerbated cracks in our system. So speaking and thinking about both this advocacy and the situation that we're in, what do you think, what are you seeing out there? What are you hearing from the needs that people are having, and what can we do to move forward and try and put us from a relief phase to a recovery phase?
Well, thanks for asking that question. And Nick, I really, because of what I'm seeing and hearing and experiencing, I'm really turning more towards thinking about relief and recovery as two separate stages, into not talking about relief without talking about recovery. That is kind of, to me, it seems that let me talk about a little bit about like what I've seen, which is probably a lot of what other folks have seen as well. You know, we see lots of people having a lack of access to food. We see that manifested in people making long lines to go to food banks, churches and other organizations, including a group I'm involved in, doing on the ground food assistance. And it can be as organized as the way the food bank does it, or a food pantry that's housed within a church or an organization, or just in the way that mutual aid does it, which is just, this is about us helping us. And so because it's been in all of the sectors, including the government sector, I mean, we have the pandemic EBT, we've had increases. So we know that there's an increasing need, and it's being met, right, by all fronts. But yet, is that enough? And what does that do towards how do we recover from this? So I think that I appreciate that question, because I really want to consider that relief as a form of recovery, relief as a way to recovery. So it is only one step, but it can't be. It's like if you're able-bodied and you have two legs and you use them, you do, right? If you don't have one, then you have to kind of adjust and use what you can, how you can. But we are not in that situation. We need to use both of our legs to get out of this. And in some of the ways, the Congress is acting as if we don't have any legs, you know, that we cannot move forward. And even then, we must move forward. But we have the ability to not only reach relief, increase, and of course that has to be met, but if we do it without recovery, it will be a constant state of relief, because this impact, this economic impact from COVID is such that there is a deep, deep economic impact that people will not be out of, and they will be subject to poverty for much longer a period of time, because poverty elimination was not part of the plan. It's just been relief, making sure you get enough food, right? Period.
Absolutely. Well, I want to just say how much I appreciate that, and seeing this as a fluid process, because I think all of us know when the pandemic hit, there was a great deal of very urgent things to do. For example, the farmer market managers came together, and us and our friends at RAFI USA and the Sustainable Agriculture Project and others, the NCDA, the North Carolina Department of Agriculture, that is, you got to stay away from acronyms, work to keep these markets open. The food banks have been heroes, working to take all the resources they possibly can and feed people during this time. And I think we've also seen opportunities, and there's one that I specifically want to highlight to talk about recovery and creating a better system going forward. So one of these, I'm actually going to mention two, one on the policy end and one on the program end that's happening. On the policy end, as many folks may be aware, we did a lot of advocacy with many allies around online SNAP. And for those who have not been up on this, not only do we need to have a SNAP increase and have more accessibility to SNAP, and again on the acronyms, that's the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. It's the largest federally funded form of food support for our communities. And so what we've seen is the last Farm Bill, there was a pilot that allowed businesses to start being able to accept benefits online. The flaw in this is that the burden has been on the businesses to create a very complicated system and platform to be able to do so. And so there's a piece of legislation called the Expanding SNAP Options Act that was introduced by Senator Durbin out of Illinois last summer, and it's been just reintroduced. And this would actually have the government fund to create a system that people could opt into, and it has a great deal, about $25 million for that, and another $75 million to help with technical assistance, because it's not always the easiest for farmers or frankly people like me and Rosa to figure out this online stuff. And so we're going to have an opportunity to work together. The other program I want to highlight and then kind of turn to the question of the role of local farms and local food in particular, and building this new, better system to help create thriving communities is the Farm Share program. That again, kind of on this relief recovery theme, Jared Cates, another esteemed CFSA staff colleague, said, hey, we've got local food hubs, they've got food boxes, we've got hungry people, especially restaurant and hospitality workers who've lost their jobs. How can we get food to them? And the Blue Cross Blue Shield folks helped raise money to feed thousands of families. But now this is something we need to maintain and make consistent because it's a good idea and can help assure that people have nutritious food grown in their communities. So tell us a little bit, Rosa, learning kind of more about these local food systems, what role you see in this relief recovery phase for that.
Wow, that's a lot, Nick. But let me just tell you that talking heroes. Yes, the food banks have really been here. There's been a lot of heroes, but I really feel like farmers, people producing food, right? Whether you're just producing your own food, right? That you probably, if you produce food, unless you have 20 people in your family, you have more than enough to feed yourselves, right? Mm-hmm. Small amount. So you're usually sharing with other folks in your community and your family. So globally, it's the small farmers that feed the people, right? Globally. So I feel like the farmers here in North Carolina, and agriculture is the #1 industry in North Carolina. So not only are they our economic heroes, but they are actually the ones that are making sure that people are fed. And there's so much to say about the connection of community to food producers. Mm-hmm. Our food system that we operate in at this time really breaks that. It has systematically and systemically broken that connection. So I would say relief comes in the way of the program that you're talking about, Jared, connecting people to food. Recovery is including that, making sure that community to producer connection is reestablished, because it was at one point, everybody knew who was producing what and where they could get what, right? That's the recovery side. And what you're saying, Nick, is exactly that. We don't want to go back, right? We don't want to go back to a system that doesn't work. We do want to go back, and it is about going back to a system that does work. So that's an example of, not just doing relief without the recovery in sight, but this pandemic has allowed us to see that, this system of disconnecting the community from the producers, the people who are responsible for the existence and the continued existence, because like I said, we're all people, we all eat. So we all have a vested interest in producers. Mm-hmm. That connection was made and in a systemic way, and now there are people who think that carrots grow in the grocery store, little kids, and that that's wrong for all kinds of reasons. But what we know now is that is dangerous for all kinds of reasons, because we need food producers, we need to know where they are, right? Because all systems can fail, and yet if we have that connection, that is a major piece. It's just like a scuba diver. If you're going to go under the water, you're not going to go without air, right? Because you need air. You're going under the water. If you don't go with air, you're not going to last very long. So it's just like us. If we go forth in life having no connection with that which sustains our life, how long are we going to go? How long are we going to last?
Absolutely. And I'm looking at our time, and it's going to be coming to a close shortly. I want to just say just a couple of things real quick. One is that, and I want to ask Rosa to say a little bit about this, but the importance of working together. I think one of the things that this time together has shown is the direct connection between eating and producing and growing, and how that system works together, but also how, and now I'm echoing, so I'm finishing more quickly, that our job coming together to advocate is also part of that connection, and that's something that we're doing right now, and we're going to be doing a training together, right?
We are, and I really want to invite people to do a couple of things if I can. One, come to this training that we're having, and I think it probably will go into the chat. We're going to be having a kind of constituency lawmaker training on the 16th, February 16th, Tuesday at 6 p.m. Invite everybody to come. The other thing is my email address, or you can contact Nick, should be in the chat. And consider having this conversation about food as a right? Both as producers, as consumers, we need to have this conversation. We need to have it together. That's the importance of us. It's one thing to say you know something, but I don't know what somebody else knows. Once I get together with them, and now I know what they know. Now, lawmakers, they might know what I know because I tell them. They might know what that person knows, right? But when they find out that we know what each other knows and we're letting them know, they become a little bit more concerned, right? Because it's much easier to compartmentalize your priorities. Let's not make it easy for folks. Let's let them know that we know what the deal is, and not just our deal. We know how our deal connects with their deal and that deal, and we want them to do their job, which is to deal with the whole deal.
Deal with the whole deal.
Right.
So I think that this is an excellent note to end on. I want to really thank Rosa and thank you all, and encourage you to join us Tuesday night. Have a great rest of your Friday and a wonderful weekend. Thanks again, Rosa.
Thanks, Nick.